We're going to continue tonight talking about this this timeline. What are we doing? We're giving we're engaged in an overview of the Bible, but what is the Bible about? The Bible is the divinely inspired record of God's plan to what? To save man, to rescue fallen man, to reconcile man back to himself, right? That's what the Bible is all about. I mentioned Jordan Peterson and this observation that he made about the hyperlinked, nature of the Bible. And this is the reason why it's like that, because there's one theme. One of the things that we tend to do, Tanya was talking to me last night, we had this conversation. One of the things that we tend to do is one problem people have is not understanding that the Bible is a book of books. While there is one story, and when I use the word story, sometimes people are a little bit taken back. The Bible is true, it's not a story. Stories can be true. It's an account of certain actions, right? And so this redemptive story, the way that it plays out, for our benefit is what the Bible is about: redemption, reconciliation. And so this is the neat thing. You can take up anywhere in the Bible, and you can figure out this whole idea of redemption and reconciliation from that point if you allow the text to take you where it intends to do so. You can end up in one book. We mentioned Sunday, for example, the book of Exodus. We think about a baby in a basket, right? What in the world does that have to do with God's plan to rescue fallen man? I mean, is it just a neat story to tell our young children in Bible class? I mean, we just got to, we have about 45 minutes to fill up. I mean, what does that have to do with my redemption and yours? Well, we'll get to that, but this is my point, that the Bible is really interesting when we understand that that's the overall theme. All we have to do is ask that question wherever we find ourselves. A lot of times, a very bad way of studying the Bible is kind of like this, right? You open it up, you point, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord," or trusts in Him. Now, what is God trying to tell me today from this verse? Don't study the Bible. That's not studying the Bible, right? But if I get to a text and I try to figure out what does this have to do with redemption, then finally I trace it back to me and what does that have to do with me? So that's just a sidebar. All right, so it's all about redemption because what happens at the beginning of time, or at least the beginning of God's account of creation here. In Genesis 1 and 2, what happens? The creation, and then chapter 3 is what? The fall of man. All right, so when we talk about the fall, we're talking about the problem of sin. What happens when we sin? We're separated from God. So again, that's the redemption story. That's the reconciliation story. Okay, so we talked about sin being a transgression of the law, 1 John 3:4. All of us are guilty. So understanding now, if somebody would read Genesis 3:15. Let's get that. Okay, so here we're introduced to the seed promise. And we'll come back to that probably frequently because the Bible comes back to that rather frequently. Who is the seed under consideration here? Jesus is. And so what we have is God promising Satan that one day the seed of woman will deliver a crushing death blow to your head, he says. That's what's going to happen. He's going to destroy you. So the Bible, now we've got this opening event, right, telling us something's going to happen, and the rest of the Bible plays out for this. Someone else, if you will, get Ephesians 3:11. All right, so this was not a last-minute plan. Everything that takes place with Christ and under consideration there is the church in that text. This was not some sort of afterthought when Jesus comes into the world, but rather from eternity, God planned this, that He would rescue fallen man in this particular way. And what is this particular way? It's by means of the cross, right? That's what the Bible is getting to. So one thing to point out as we introduce this problem of sin, that the Bible is going to tell us all about the solution and what God does to bring about that solution. All right, so let's also notice that the Bible is divided into three main periods of time, divided by how God dealt with man. God communicated to man during three different periods in three primary ways, right? The first period of time we'll put here between creation and those commandment stones down there. That's what those are. So we have the patriarchal period. That's what that stands for. What is a patriarch? Father. All right, so the patriarchs were the fathers. So during this period of time, God dealt with or communicated directly to, dealt with the tribe or the clan through the heads of the families, right? Give me some examples. During the patriarchal period, God communicating with the heads of the families. Abraham. He's a pretty important guy in the Bible, isn't he? All right. Who else? Job. Who? Jacob. Who? Noah. All right. Noah. All right. So God is communicating directly His will with people in this way. There was a priesthood of some sort, right? How do we know that? Melchizedek. Yeah. But we get just a glimpse of him, and that may be another one of these things. Why is that in there? The whole event. This is another side note. Sorry, I do this. The whole event regarding Melchizedek takes up just a little portion of the book of Genesis, right? I don't even know what part. And by the way, I'm now illustrating that during Bible studies, you can ask your students to Google something, right? Not only can you do it as a teacher, you can ask them. So if somebody will, find that account. Where is Melchizedek in the book of Genesis? Okay, never mind Google. We've got Brian. Genesis 14. But it's just this small glimpse. And then when does he show up? Yeah, the New Testament, the book of Hebrews, what? Google, 5 through 7. All right. Maybe it's the case that the only reason we even get a glimpse of Melchizedek there is because he stands as what? As a pattern of, as a shadow of Christ. I think sometimes we get caught up in who this Melchizedek was. We should say it just that he was an image of Christ, priesthood of Christ. All right, so anyway, that aside, God communicated with man in that way during that period of time, the patriarchal period. What's the next period of time? Well, Moses, so the Mosaic period. So, what is the Mosaic period? What's going on here? How does God communicate during this period? Okay, aside from the possibility that he's still communicating with the Gentile world, just sticking to this, the law of Moses, which takes up the majority of what part of our Bible? Not the New Testament, the Old Testament, right? All right. It was given for a specific group of people. I said Gentiles a minute ago, so who's left? The Jews. Well, but when it was given, were they Jews yet? Yeah, trick question. They weren't Jews. They weren't called Jews until when? Do you know? Until they take Jerusalem. Yeah. So the Hebrews, the descendants of Abraham, the Jews. Okay. So this law was given to the Hebrews, to the Jewish people, and it's filled with all kinds of things. Give me some examples of how ceremonial and traditional and maybe even strange this law was. What? Okay, so very detailed instructions regarding priestly garments. That's good. So sacrifices, and there are other religions. Remember, in the world, eventually they're sacrificing, but there's still something different about these particular sacrifices. But all kinds of laws, and sometimes strange ones, right? And so what we have to understand is that this law was not just religious law. What else was it? Civil law. All right. And then what is the next period of time? The Christian period of time. Okay. So that kind of takes us back. Let's kind of back up for just a moment, knowing that these three periods of time exist. So the patriarchs were from creation until the giving of the law, which is about what, Exodus 20? And then the law lasted until when? Till the gospel of Christ. From the presentation of the church, the giving of the law of Christ, the gospel, until the end of time, right? We are in the Christian age. John 11:24, if you want a verse back over here, you can put John 11:24. This is it Mary or Martha that's talking about a particular event? What does she say? On the last day. So the reason I did that because we have this idea of time, right? Creation until judgment, so from the beginning until the last day. Okay, so Christianity, the period of the law of Christ will last until the judgment. Okay, so let's back up for just a moment. And one of the things that it's important for us to get is that from Genesis 3 on, we have this anticipation of something and some things happening, right? That the future holds something greater. So let's put a few passages with this. John 1:29. Okay, so why would John the Baptist, seeing Jesus coming to him, refer to him as the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world? Let's read this next passage and put these together. Get Hebrews 10:1. Okay, so the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the thing. So if you cast a shadow over your hand, you can see it on the ground, right? And you can, in fact, if you came in a room and all you see is this weird shadow on the ground, you can, and 5 digits or whatever, you can tell that it's a hand, right? But what can you tell more about it from the shadow? A lot? Probably not. I mean, it could be, the hand of a large person or a small person, male, female, we don't know how much melanin is in the skin, all of that. The shadow. So the shadow is just kind of a dark image of it, right? But what's the hand? It's the real thing. Yeah. And so when those sacrifices were made on altars year after year continually, what were they? They were shadows of something. Of what? Of the perfect sacrifice of Christ. Yeah. Yeah. He was, behold the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. Those sacrifices were given because of the people's sins, right? Offered because of sin. Sacrificed in very specific details in the old law. They were a picture of the one to come. So there's this anticipation throughout the Old Testament. And that's why I said this inductive way of studying the Bible, asking the question, especially when we know that it's all about reconciliation. I think that's the first question that we need to ask, aside from, maybe who's talking and what's going on, is what does this have to do with redemption or reconciliation? It has to do something with it. Somebody get Genesis 12, 1 through 3. What we have here again showing up is the seed promise. Remember, we have it down here in Genesis 3:15. Now we have it in Genesis 12, 1 through 3. That's the scarlet thread, right? Someone is coming that is going to make things right. The world is fallen. Man is in sin. He needs to be rescued. He needs to be saved. That's the idea of salvation. All right, so it's going to require a couple of things, 3 things at least. It's going to require the development of a nation. All right, so this family has to grow. Abraham's family has to grow into a nation, because what's going to happen? The seed is what? The seed is a person. So this person has to come. So this person is going to come through a particular seed line, right? And that will be within a nation of people who are dwelling in a particular land. So God acquires the real estate, right? He places these people in the land. He gives them a law. But that's not the end of it. And that's a problematic view, by the way, of premillennialism and this idea that the Jews are still God's chosen people. He did choose them. And the gospel is to go to the Jew first and also to the Greek. But he chose them for the purpose of bringing about what? Christ. We're bringing about the seed. bringing about redemption. That was their purpose. All right, so what happens over this period of time then is that God is working out this plan. He's got the nation through the descendants of Abraham. He's given them a law. That's Exodus 20, after this nation develops. He's placed them in this land. They didn't follow his instructions. They're reaping consequences of that during the days of the judges and then in the days of the kings. David is a type of Christ. How? Obviously not the bad part of David, but what? He's a shepherd, okay? What else? King, prophet. But I think most importantly, David is a descendant, or Jesus is a descendant of David, right? See, all a part of redemptive history. It all goes back to this idea of redemption. Ultimately, all of this, though, is pointing to Christ, right? To the Messiah. So Jesus comes into the world. Let's look at a couple of verses. Galatians 4, 4, and 5 is one that will cover good ground here. So in the fullness of time, when everything was ready, what does that mean? When everything was in place. And so it was this unfolding plan, right? In the fullness of time, God sent forth His Son. All right, somebody get Luke 19:10. Why would He send forth the Son? To reconcile those under the law? Worded differently, but He came to seek and to save the lost. Again, this is what it's all been about, right? Because of the problem of sin. All the way back at the beginning, He has come to take care of the sin problem. He's going to step in and He's going to pay the price. But there's something that takes place as well. He makes a promise in Matthew 16:18. Somebody read that. Matthew 16:18. All right, so Jesus promises to build His church. All right, so we fast forward just a little while, and what we're learning is that in Acts 2:47, for example, that it says that the Lord added to the what? Church daily those who are being saved. Church is not the building, but it represents these people. These people are whom? Again, the saved. They're the saved. So when a person does what Jesus says to do regarding salvation, the Lord adds him to the church. And so let's think about the promise that was made, Matthew 16:18. I will build what? My church. And the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. What is Hades? Death. So what is He saying? Death is, I'm going to build my church, and not even death is going to prevent me from doing this. I think that's what He's saying. All right? Because I'm going to put with this, let's look at, somebody else get Acts 20:28. All right, so the church was purchased with blood. When did God shed blood? By the way, Jesus was God in the flesh, right? Why was He in the flesh? So He could shed blood. Yep, spirit cannot die, cannot be killed. He had to shed blood. A man for a man, right? Perfect man for a perfect man, for a fallen perfect man. All right? So not only would death not prevent Him from establishing His church, death was necessary for Him to establish His church. See that? He had to die. This was all a part of what? The eternal purpose of God. So everything that we've kind of alluded to up to this point, not only was it talking about Jesus coming into the world and Jesus dying on the cross, it is also about the church. Because the church is what it was all about. It's about the saved. He came to seek and to save that which is lost. You see that? Sometimes we don't emphasize the church enough. In fear of de-emphasizing God and de-emphasizing Jesus, maybe sometimes we don't emphasize the church enough. And I know that we could exalt it too much too. But I mean, in this way, this is what it was all about. And this is one of the amazing things that hits me every once in a while, is that I'm a part of that. Everything that God did to bring about reconciliation is fulfilled in the church. You get that? And I get to be a part of that. A part of all of the promises and all of the prophecies that were made in the Old Testament and even in the New Testament. I get to be a part. What does Matthew 7:13 and 14 tell us regarding eternal life and eternal death? There are two ways. What are they? The broad way, which leads to what's the number on that way? Many. And what's the other way? The narrow, straight way that leads to life, and few there are that find it. Proclaiming that is, I don't mean this in an arrogant way whatsoever. This should be humbling. All right, this is where we're going to stop tonight. We're going to talk about what happens with this church that was established. Okay, there ends up, and you can faintly see it here, there ends up being a falling away. Let me give you a preview. There's a falling away. People turn from the doctrine that Christ gave through His apostles and prophets, and it culminates into a religion that is not the New Testament church. And then that gives way to a number of other churches that are not the churches that we read about in the New Testament. This is just the result. And this is what history tells us. This is not the opinion of a preacher. My opinion doesn't matter. Google it, right? Look up church history. This is just the way that things played out. We can look up when churches started. And so what is our desire? All we want to do, if this is the idea of I'm just telling you where I'm coming from, if I sit down and study the Bible with someone, and I want him to know where I'm coming from, I see that the Bible is God's Word, right? It proves itself to be, plenty of evidence. It tells me about this problem that I have, the problem of sin. I am guilty of sin. I've been separated from God. If I die in that condition, I'm lost eternally. That's why I need to be saved. That's what salvation is. I need to be rescued. God put into motion, though, a plan. And that plan culminates ultimately after all of these things that God has done. In the fullness of time, when God brings forth His Son, He offers Him as a sacrifice for your sin and for my sin. And by doing that, He purchases the church, of which you and I have the opportunity to be a part. This idea that God has been pursuing man is a biblical theme. I mean, from the beginning, He's pursued after us. You remember the question that He asks Adam and Eve in the garden? Where are you? I mean, He wasn't seriously playing hide and seek, right? This is God. He knows where they are. He wants them to know where they are. And He wants them to see that He is coming after them, and not like, coming after them, but He's wanting to be with them. But they've done something terrible. What is it? It's sin. They've transgressed His law, and that's broken fellowship, and they get it, right? That's why they're hiding out. That's why they've covered themselves at least with fig leaves. What happens next? So God rebukes Adam, He rebukes Eve, He rebukes Satan, right? But what does He do before He sends them out of the garden? He clothes them. Where did they get those clothes from? Those were animal skins. Where are the animals? Probably is an inference here to the first sacrifice for sin. A sacrifice had to be made. You see, it's there from the very beginning. Christ is there. Redemption is there. Reconciliation is there. And ultimately it's found in the church. The manifold wisdom of God